I kind of want to move a little bit forward and then bring this into the coronavirus context, right? So on January, I think it was 27th, you tweeted out, one thing I've learned from this coronavirus response thus far is institutions will never do the right thing fast enough in a situation like this to prevent a global disaster when that day arrives. And I don't know, I think we're there. That was a month or so ago. And why have public institutions been so late and inadequate with their response to this?
Yeah, because what we've done in the last 10 years in particular is created this environment that is so, it's like the opposite of anti-fragile. All right. I mean, it's super fragile. You know, it's been coddled so much, like any downtick in the markets, you have to save the markets. Any problems, right? Immediate Band-Aid has to be put on rather than reckoning. So world leaders have created this. It's like this delicate flower that the slightest thing can knock it over, but anything big is going to completely pummel it. And something like a global pandemic is like the black swan of all black swans for something like this, because nobody actually considered it. So I think what was going on from a leadership point of view is this complete inability to reckon with something this big, because they knew that they couldn't handle something this big, right? They know that the system can't handle something this big. So instead of actually thinking that it could be this big, they just decided to put their heads in the sand, because it was too scary to contemplate. And you saw that right off the beginning. I mean, you didn't have to be a genius to look at China building hospitals in 4 days to know there's a problem. Okay, at that point, we didn't know how far it would spread or anything, but you knew there was a major problem in China. And you had to assume that since flights were still leaving China, that it was going to spread. So when I saw, what really tipped me off, other than the fact that China was building hospitals overnight, was the fact that these global leaders were just downplaying it so much. And this is it's sort of like one of those little signals, okay? Because they tend to hype things up, right? Fear, when it's to their advantage. So if like after 9/11, I mean, the fear mongering just went off the charts. I mean, it was clearly just like be as afraid as possible. And then they passed things like the Patriot Act and other stuff like that we've been living with ever since. Our civil liberties have been essentially destroyed in a lot of ways in this country, thanks to 9/11. So when there's a crisis, and I don't immediately see the world leaders or establishment or status quo trying to make you afraid, to take away more of your rights, that just sent off an alarm bell to me. That to me was just like, okay, they really don't get this at all, and they're just not dealing with it. So that's how I knew. And you just have to assume that the leadership today across the world, because of how, let's say, easy it's been, okay, particularly in the U.S., have no ability to manage any sort of a crisis scenario. They don't know it. They don't know anything like it, and they're not going to be able to do it. And that's what you're seeing right now. You cannot trust authority you can't trust what they say at all, period. End of story. Like, just don't. And I hope that's a lesson for people out of this, to think for yourself, to analyze the facts and use your own intuition, because no one's coming to save you, right? Politician is not going to come save you. The government is not going to come save you. When you need it, they're not saving you. And by the way, they didn't save you in 2008 and 2009 either, as I like to explain. Right? You wouldn't have Donald Trump elected. You wouldn't have had the upsurge in Bernie Sanders, right? It's a youth-led political movement if things were just so great after the crisis, right? I mean, we're still dealing with the consequences of that.
So do you think the reason that there was no real reform after 2008 was just to kind of kick the can down the road, and it's made everything, this situation maybe worse than it was?
Oh, 100%. I mean, we would, because it's a combination of reasons. First, the one reason which I described is because if you're just going to make another castle of sand on the old castle of sand, you're going to end up with the same result. But the other reason is that the leadership, Okay, the sorts of people who were being listened to back then are the exact same sorts of people that are being listened to on television, right? I mean, they're still bringing Larry Summers out to talk, and nobody asks him about Epstein. Okay, but you see my point? Like they just keep wheeling out the same completely discredited, corrupt, crony-ish people that they've been doing for decades. So it's the same thing with the Iraq war, right? There's no consequences. The people that were cheerleading that war on are now resistance heroes to neoliberals. We're just recycling the worst, most wrong people that we have in our society into different leadership positions. So when you have this situation, and it's the same sort of thing with Wall Street investments. If you bail out people that made mistakes, okay, and make them whole or help them regain their fortunes, you're not actually putting those assets into stronger hands, and it's the same sort of thing with leadership. All of our leadership that we need to listen to, the people that are making decisions and advising, let's say President Trump or President Obama, they're all the same wrong, clueless people we've had for decades. So I have no faith that anything's going to get sustainably better until all of these people are gone. I'm not saying dead. I'm saying completely irrelevant to the national dialogue and to what we're doing. We need an entirely new group of people, and even on an individual level in communities, just to step up and be able to be the voice of reason. The people that have been leading us. I mean, and it's even a wrong word to use because there's no leadership about these people, are the most unwise people we have, right? The most corrupt people that we have in society. But here's the good news. I think we have a ton of wise, smart, heroic, courageous, innovative talent in this country and in the world. We just need to be able to elevate those voices and those people to create the new world that I think we can create. But I think this is a transition point. So in other words, like once we get through this transition point, and it could take a few years, not just Corona, right? I mean, that's just domino number one. That's when I'm going to get so optimistic about our future. Could take a few years, but that's what needs to happen. We need a complete changing of the guard. Complete.
So you're saying you would be buying the dip here?
No.
In cultural terms?
Yeah, well, I would be trying to build what's coming. Okay. So like I wrote a series and I recommend anyone watching this, check it out, on localism. And this is something that I'll be talking about more and more going forward. It's about, I think it's a 4 or 5 part series. I don't think I wrote part 5 yet, maybe next week, but it's just talking about how I think society, politics, culture, everything should be structured. And it just discusses this top-down, overly centralized approach that we have and we've come to embrace, where we're looking to Washington, D.C. for everything, where we say, oh, we just need to elect good people, or, oh, well, if 2020 doesn't work out, 2024 is going to work out. That's just like the slave mentality. The way we're going to get out of this is for as many people as possible to look at themselves first and say, I can't change Washington, D.C., but I can change my mindset. I can change my behavior. I can be nicer to my wife. I can be nicer to my neighbors. I can be a better person. I can do stuff. Okay? Every single person can control their attitude and their lives. And if enough people do that, the world will change. But we're just not there yet, unfortunately. But I think something like this, and as other dominoes fall from here on out, could be the catalyst to spark that movement in people. And I hope I can play a role in inspiring people to think that way.